Power
Mind
on
Music.
We did it.
Our Mind on Music. The producers.
Okay, so we're talking about producers, but this time we're talking about more modern guys, and specifically, guys who produce using computers and DAWs. Am I?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and the one thing that I realized as we started doing the research is we kind of limited ourselves, actually, because what does being a producer mean is so complex in terms of, and we've gone through this list a little bit, but it's not just the person who stands in the studio with their arms crossed and say, let's try another take because I think you were a little bit flat or
That song's not going to cut it on this album, I'm afraid.
I don't hear a hit here.
I don't hear a hit.
Yeah, and they always say that with the F word in there.
I know. Those guys. Good thing this is a clean podcast.
I know. This is not an explicit podcast.
Yeah, it's a family podcast.
I take that on YouTube and everything.
The F word is F sharp.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Well,
okay.
This is did you say Producers 2?
Yep.
Okay, good. Because we already did an amazing podcast on Producers, the first one.
Fascinating.
It was, for me, it was, I don't know where we came up with all that stuff, but
definitely
anyways,
wasn't research.
This one we actually did, you actually did some research
I read some
on this
things.
one.
Yeah.
So the article that you sent me.
Yeah. So there was a guy in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
He did this thing. It was actually for his BA in music studies.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, so that's why it was kind of academic, right? When I read it,
it was very written as an academic paper.
Well, I was just going to say that as I read through it, he kind of covers all the points in a lot of ways that we did in our last podcast, which was like, what is a producer? And from what I read anyway, I skimmed it. I didn't read the whole thing, but from what I got, he said the producer wears many hats, sometimes just one hat, sometimes all the hats. So sometimes he's in charge of, making sure the project is funded, making sure the studio is available, there's enough studio time, that they're on budget, right down to, deciding which effect goes on the chorus of the second song on the album.
Right. Exactly. This is Jared Paul was the BA student who wrote this for...
Congratulations, Jared.
Wesleyan University. So that was interesting because that was where we sort of started with this whole thing is like, what exactly is a producer? Because you had asked about like, is there a difference between a record producer and a music producer? And then an interesting thing that you said, you were talking about, I don't want to go and say DJ because they're not really DJs.
Right.
Actually, a lot of these guys, I was listening to David Guetta.
David Guetta, yeah. Is it Guetta or Guetta?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah. Quinoa?
I thought... We're back to this, are we?
Well, we got to circle back.
We're going to do this
That's
again.
A callback to the first episode.
Callback. Yeah.
If
I think it's David Guetta because it's spelled Guetta, but and he was referring to himself as a DJ, and he was talking about.
That's true, actually. What about Calvin Harris? Same thing.
Totally, yeah. I mean, and it was funny because when I first started looking up this stuff, he was the first name that came up in my mind. Did you know it's not his real name, Calvin Harris?
It's not his real name. Love his stuff, by the way.
The new thing that he did with Pharrell Williams, and
how new? As in how new?
Like this past summer, like last month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard it yet.
Well, that's funny you should say that because I was at the Terrace this morning. I had to go pick up.
The song was on in the Terrace?
It was on in the Terrace.
Shameless plug for the Terrace, which is a bar that restaurant and bar that we own in SeaWorld, Shenzhen, China.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
You heard it in Terrace is what you were saying? Stop in for Thai food. Stay for the music.
Yummy. Yeah. All right. No, but seriously, I was in there and it was really funny because to be totally honest, I saw the video on the screens, beside the stage, and I was like, "Oh, that's the new Calvin Harris song."
Had you been listening to it though before that? Like, have you been listening to the album, or that's the first time you heard it? The
only reason I knew it existed is because when I was doing the research on these guys, I was like, the last thing I've heard of from him was like 4 years ago.
Is it an all-star album? Like, is it Pharrell and then other people on there?
Totally. I think Justin Timberlake.
That's what I like about his stuff. You get a really wide range of artists on there.
Well, I mean, Justin Timberlake, who now has become like, the what do you call it, OG kind of guy, right? Like he's been around for ages now.
Yeah.
And then Pharrell's
an old timer now.
I know, it's crazy. I mean,
he still looks like a prep school kid though.
He does. He looks really good for his age, actually. But then Halsey, I think, sings on it as well.
Okay.
It's like 3 really well-known singers who sing on this one song, but it's a
Nice.
Calvin Harris production, right? Just
So what do we know about Calvin Harris? What did you find out about him? Does he produce everything on his own, or does he?
pretty much, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
so he is one of those guys that I would use an example that he's a DJ who started to record stuff and then got really well known, had like just huge response, and then little by little these famous people wanted to record with him. So then the DJ becomes a DJ in a studio instead of always in front of a live audience, right?
Right.
And DJing isn't also what I thought of like back in the day when we were
Okay,
spinning-
well, let me jump in as an old-time musician here.
yeah.
DJs actually had a bad, for us we did live music,
Okay.
and these guys were taking our jobs away. And a
Oh.
DJ initially was the guy from the radio station, who had a bit of a name for himself and would come out and spin records at a club or whatever. And, eventually it got to what it is today where, you go to most of the bars now that you go to are DJ music.
Yes, yeah. Which I mean, that's
Which wasn't the case when I was coming into the music scene. We were, live music. There was bands in Edmonton on any given weekend. You would have, 8 to 10 places that had full-on live bands.
Totally. And I come from that same time, right? When I was playing in bands, it was easy to find a gig because everybody was looking for live music because that's what people wanted to go and listen to and dance to and all that kind of stuff. And we had clubs like dance clubs, right, where they would just have DJs playing. But definitely the place that was going off on a given night was the place that had live music,
Right.
But then that's where I think it changed. Actually, it was
did.
in those clubs. And the DJs started to get bigger and bigger crowds.
Yeah.
And suddenly it was like, that was the attraction.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Like the DJs that we think of as DJs now are not like those DJs from the 80s or 90s. They're
Totally.
They're,
Yeah,
they are actually like, full-on music production. Think of that song, Dance Monkey.
Yeah.
She started on, busking on the street with a backing track, in Australia.
Okay.
And she's in many respects, she's a DJ, right?
Yes. There's some young kids working out of, young kids like in their 20s, but there are these guys working out of Toronto who they just did like a tour. They're producers, right? But he's producing, Ley Vara is a singer, really good singer, and the guy who produces her.
Link in the description.
Yes, we got to do that. Yeah. The guy who's producing her, Josh, I think is his name. He and his like group of people that he's recording with, they just went out and did this like mini tour, and they're DJing. Like they have the singers up there, on the stage, but the crowd is going off just from them spinning like these recordings and stuff.
Have you seen the Chainsmokers shows with
Yes.
with Coldplay and
I thought
all
it was
that?
really. They were one of the ones that came up, and when I was looking for like who are the biggest producers today and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they came up, and I was like, I didn't even realize they were producers. I thought that was a band.
Yeah, I heard that song, something just like this. I thought it was another Coldplay song.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So the DJs developed into something where they weren't just like doing record scratching, playing Run DMC songs anymore.
Yeah.
Now they were like creating their own music, and it makes me feel like, okay, what I do on GarageBand then makes sense in that
Sure.
that idea.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought that what I'm doing there is more like DJing.
But that's what I was trying to say last week. Is you've got on computers, even on an iPhone now,
Yeah.
for a couple of years already, you've got the tools to make, to create and produce, in the truest sense of the word, to produce music
Right.
in its basic form. We've all got access to that now, whereas it wasn't the case back in the day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where a lot of these guys are coming from, where these people are coming from, is that they're just messing around with some software on their computer.
Yeah.
But some just have a great ear for it, and they can hear stuff that they know people will love. Like one of the things that I think it was David, I'm going to use Guetta.
All right. Guetta. What?
Anyway, but I think it was him that was talking about when he first had to go record in a studio, like a big studio. He was like, I don't know how to use any of this stuff. I just know how to use my...
So you're saying after he had been recording on his computer for so long. Then he went into a big studio and he didn't know how to use the stuff.
Exactly.
That's funny.
And you know what's? I found him really cool, actually, and I watched a couple of interviews with him, and I found him really cool because the interviewer said, so, like, did you try to sort of fake it, or were you embarrassed or something? And he's like, no, I'm not a faker. I said, give me some headphones, I'll plug in, like, give me a cable to plug directly into my laptop.
Do you know what the project was?
I don't know, actually, no.
I would have loved to see some footage of that, or like, how did he navigate the studio after having done everything on his own?
Yeah, I mean, over time, I'm sure he's learned it now.
Sure.
But going in originally, he was like, I got to get the job done. I'm not going to sit around and do a course on how to use your studio.
Right.
I'm gonna make sure that I get it done. So he just did what he knew.
Do you know, we were right on the edge of that in the late '80s. You know, we were right on the edge of the old school and the new school.
Totally.
Right? I think, you know, we talked about having the 512K Mac with the SMPTE thing for the time code and everything like that. So it was just starting to have like that computer-based, the computer-based kind of home studio vibe.
Totally. I remember I was studying at the Harris Institute for the Arts in Toronto. So we were studying how to record, and we were working in Comfort Sound Studios, which was a truck that was like a mobile recording studio.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they recorded, the one that's coming to my mind right now was Blue Rodeo, but he recorded like a lot of Canadian artists. I remember Steppenwolf was playing. So John Kay grew up in Toronto, right?
Right. Canadian dude.
So he recorded him at one point.
Yeah.
But we were learning on 2-inch reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah.
You know, these Fostex recorders.
24 track or?
Sorry?
24 track?
24, yeah. And it was so cool. Like, I loved going in there before the recording session, and you had to demagnetize all the heads.
We went through all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So already we're into the Alesis 8-track, and we're starting to get like, I guess Cubase and all. But you're still learning all the analog. That was probably the majority of the course, wasn't it?
Totally, yes.
Yeah.
And at the Harris Institute, at that time, they were like groundbreaking because them and Trebas Institute, they had digital recording was starting to come in. We had a computer in the Harris Institute where you could go on Cubase and record something.
Question. So you are a music teacher in SIS.
Yep.
How much does computer and digital recording play into what you guys teach?
I've taught it for a number of years as one unit of a class that I do called Music Mix, which is where students come in and they get to play electric guitars and bass and drums. And then one of the things we do is we use GarageBand because we have the Macs and everybody has GarageBand. So we use GarageBand to teach the kids a little bit about songwriting and arranging. And really, they can just use the loops that are built into GarageBand, and they can create pretty cool stuff. But then we go back and we talk about song structure and those kinds of things in arranging, right? Yeah. And then we just created a course this year that the other music teacher here at the school is going to be teaching. It's called Digital Creation. And the whole course is a one-semester course on songwriting and arranging using digital audio workstations.
Right on. By the way, a statement that I heard, Robert Greenberg? Robert Greenberg.
Yeah, RG Music.
RG Music. Okay, so I'm listening to his lectures about Beethoven, the 9 symphonies.
I'm going to put the link to, because he has a website and a podcast, so I'll put a link in.
I love the way he talks about these things too. Cool, like he's very, he can actually be fairly irreverent.
Ooh.
Which is nice. Well, it's nice when you're talking about classical music because it gets a bad rap for being really stuffy and everything like that, which I think a lot of the aristocracy comes into play and people with money come into play, et cetera, et cetera. So my point being, and I will get to a point, here it comes.
Zip.
He said, if somebody's writing any music, composing music for an audience, and he knows that, or he suspects that, he dismisses it right away.
Ooh, that's interesting. A lot of people have said this. You start writing the song, it's very personal. It's whatever muse came to you and you just start going with it, It's whatever your personal reasons are.
Yeah.
Elton John, actually, in I think, was it called 2 Rooms? Was the
2 Rooms, great. It's like a documentary.
Documentary, right?
And then they also had I had the box set.
Okay, I didn't know.
Oh man, fantastic.
But yes, 2 Rooms. It was Elton John who says it's a very personal thing when you first start with a song, but at a certain point you have to let it go. you give that song to arrangers, to musicians, etc., and little by little they put their stamp on it, right?
Right.
That if he's talking about, at the genesis of the song, if you're thinking what audience will listen to this, then you've already
You're kind of behind the eight ball. You're writing. It's not coming from you.
It's not going to be sincere. It's not going to be authentic, and people will see through that.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the meat of the matter, which is
so
EDM guys.
Right, and we had to limit ourselves a bit because we realized, talking through this basically, that being a producer is songwriting, arranging. It's also can get into so many other things like the finances of it and all that kind of stuff. We've limited ourselves really to EDM producers, electric dance music producers, because if you just talk about everybody who's producing everything, we'll never get to the end. It's just...
We'll be here till we're gray in the face.
We'll be here forever. I mean...
So we've kind of modified our definition a little bit, which is producing can be any of the long laundry list of activities related to the project of recording. Yes. Anything, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just one of those things. It can be just, the overseer of the project, or right down to the nitty-gritty details of who's doing which harmony on which part of the verse.
That's right. And actually, there are some great videos. The New York Times that does a series, The Diary of a Song. So they talk to the people who created a song, and they talk about how did this song start and what was the development of it. And you and I have talked about Skrillex and Diplo. Mm-hmm. Right, as two of the guys who are going to be on this list for sure in terms of EDM,
absolutely,
producers who are doing huge things, right? Mm-hmm. But as much as they've done some really interesting things with the digital part of this, like the tools that you can use for that, it was really cool to listen to them talk about the song that they did with Justin Bieber. Mm-hmm. Where Are You Now? Mm-hmm. Where are you now?
Yeah. Where are you now?
That's exactly how he sounds. It's amazing. I'm scared.
How do you do that? Is it because you're Canadian?
Because the accent is the same. I don't know. But it's really cool. If you want to go on to, they have it on YouTube and stuff. You can find it easily.
That's Justin Bieber. Where are you now? That's Justin Bieber?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Justin Bieber wrote that with another writer who I believe his name is Pooh Bear?
Can I just say something about Justin Bieber now? When he came out, the baby thing and the whole thing, literally I was one of the, the snooty musicians that poo-pooed the dude.
You were a dismister.
He's really come into his own. Songwriting, producing, all of that. It was his album in 2015, came out I think just before Christmas, because I was traveling to Canada at that time, and his album had just come out, and I listened to that album and I went, wow. Yeah. He's really come into his own here.
So I think, the funny thing is, I think that happens with all of them. Like, I met a guy, you notice how you said we got to get on topic, and like we're not.
Well, we clarified that in the very first episode, okay?
Yeah.
So here we go.
Squirrel.
Yeah. So we're just going to go off on this path, and we'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Or not. Just wait here.
We'll circle around.
So yeah, I think that has to happen. Like, the fact that he had a hit that young is amazing, right? What a great opportunity for him, right? Mm-hmm. And then there are going to be ups.
Wait a minute. Opportunity? Mm-hmm. He had what it took at that point, and he took advantage of it.
Oh, yes. So we
remember
talked
that
about
discussion, right?
Yes, because I said I don't believe in just luck. Mm-hmm. I feel like you get opportunities, and then you either run with them or you don't.
Do you know what? I don't think. I think I want to clarify what you and I were talking about there, mm-hmm. and then we can go back to this other meandering,
this other stuff that I lost track of where we started.
I think, honestly, I don't believe in luck. I think that opportunities come and go all the time. All the time.
Yep.
And you just have to put yourself in a position to be ready for one of them.
It's like that thing, it's become a bit of a cliche now, but people show an iceberg and they say, this is the part that you see, right? This is the part of somebody's success that you see, just the iceberg above the water. And we don't see that 3/4 of the iceberg is under the water, which is all of the work that they did, all of the studying. And
well, look at my hairdo as a case in point. It just didn't happen like overnight, okay?
This has been a process that has taken...
It's a long... the iceberg is down here, but the top is right.
Why don't we have video? Darn you, video.
Oh, just look at the photo. You know what I mean.
You know.
I'm the guy on the right. Okay, so back to your Justin Bieber comment.
Okay, so Justin Bieber, I think I was wanting to talk about that song, which ties in really well with what you're saying. He came out with a Baby, Baby, Baby song.
Baby. That's what everybody calls it. They request it.
It's the Baby, Baby song, yeah.
We actually do it. I'm sorry to say. I hope this doesn't prevent anybody from going to see us, but we'll do a little version of that if somebody requests it.
I think if it's a request, it's go for it. Have a little fun. Jeez Louise.
We just do like a verse and a chorus. It's pretty funny.
There you go.
But anyways.
So he came in really young, had this opportunity, ran with it, right? Somehow he got people to listen and people to notice, right? Now that could have been it. And for a lot of people, that is it. You know, there's so many.
For a lot of people, that's enough, right?
Sure.
You get that much notoriety and you kind of go, okay, I'm going to party for the rest of my life.
Or turn it into other things. I want to talk at some point about Thomas Dolby. I watched a video of him talking. 2018, I think he was honored by Roland Keyboards for a Lifetime Achievement Award. I do think if we're talking about producers and we're talking about sort of the antecedents of guys like this, like Diplo and Skrillex and David Guetta. I pause.
Did you figure that out? It's Guetta?
I'm pretty sure that is the correct.
It's Guetta. Go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah. It's weird. I thought I saw you say something. I'm sure the mic picked it up.
I'm hiding behind the screen so you can't see what I'm saying.
He's got a breath screen. What do you call it? Let's call it.
It's a spit guard.
Spit guard. Okay, so a couple of things. Skrillex and Diplo, they met up. They started to work together, and then they ended up having this chance to work with Justin Bieber on a song that he had written because he had gone from like the super fame part to a very difficult part in his life. That song is about that, like, oh yeah, you're all my fans and you're screaming and not just fans. It's not about like dissing the fans. It's about like all the people in the business as well who are, you know, oh, let's do lunch and that kind of stuff. But then when he's in a moment where he's actually like possibly losing his career, or at least the momentum of his career, and he's looking around saying...
And I remember looking at the tabloids, and he even was on a Letterman joke and all this at one point.
Yeah, so that career, was... Right? And I mean, I kind of forget that now, honestly, because I mean, I didn't pay close attention to it at the time, but I kind of forget that a little bit. But he was at what he said was a really difficult time in his life, which was also a really difficult time in his career, and he wrote that song with somebody else. And then Diplo and Skrillex took a song that was a much slower tempo, a much darker sort of feel to it, and they show what they did with like taking just different sounds and how they create.
You're talking about the New York Times article, or
it's a video. It's a video. Diary of a Song.
So Diplo worked with him on that, or was it
both?
Diplo?
They worked together.
They both did. Okay.
Yeah. So they had this opportunity to work with him on this song that a lot of people said was not going to be a hit because it was slow, it was dark. It was a guy going through a difficult time in his life, saying to people who he thinks are his friends, where are you now? Who are my friends? You know, which, okay, fine. But if you have a song that's very personal to you at the time of writing, if you want millions of people to listen to it, you have to be able to sort of let go of that moment at a certain point.
Wait a minute, that's not Justin Bieber though.
I believe it
is. It? Oh,
I'll tell you about that in a sec.
You mean this vocal is him? There we go.
Okay, so what they did, I guess at some point they talked through this a little bit. He had sent them some audio files to work with, right? So they go and they listen to it, and all they had was that audio. And a couple of things happened. They said, well, we need something hooky, right? And they didn't want to just take instruments and turn them into that thing that we just heard. They said, let's use his vocals. First of all, it'll be a lot more unique because you can use a whatever, like we talked about using synth swells and things like that. But by using a vocal to do that, you get a sound that really only his voice can make exactly that.
Yeah.
So they thought that was cool to do that. So that's his vocal that they then processed and played with.
Nice.
There's part of what being a producer today is. Just knowing how to even do that, much less to have that wherewithal to think of that, you know, the originality and the concept of it. And then if you listen further into that song, doo. There's like a thing that sounds very like shows how he did that. He just like played it and then processed it and played around with it, and, you know. And Justin Bieber says, yeah, these guys, they sit down with like this one sound for an hour until they get it just so, and then they move on to the next thing, right? That's when I think of being a producer. That's what I think of.
Keep working it till we get it right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back, I mentioned Elton John earlier when he had to. When I say let go, I don't mean like just.
I know what he's talking about. It's like you get to a certain point of the song and you go, okay, this is really as far as I'm going to be able to take it. You've got time constraints. You've got tours to do. You've got, you know, other things that you.
Musical knowledge. I mean, so for Elton John, if I'm not mistaken, his arranger, at least on Madman Across the Water, was Del Newmar.
Was it Del Newmar? There's another guy that did one too called Gus Dudgeon.
Okay, so
I don't know which album he was on though.
I mean, for anybody listening, we're putting out the names Del Newmar and Gus Dudgeon. Yeah. So here's an idea I'm stealing from the Wax Audio podcast. This is me in the future correcting myself. It was not Del Newmar. It was Del Newman with an N at the end. And he worked on Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, among other albums. And Leon goes on to say that Gus Dudgeon was also an arranger. He was actually the producer on Madman Across the Water. So, educated.
Madman Across the Water is such an amazing arrangement.
Oh, man.
Just mind-blowing.
Oh, there's just so much to hear in there. And everything about it, the way the strings come in, the way they did that guitar, the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
With the harmonics, you know? When I think what is, at least for me, the most interesting thing about being a producer, it's that moment where you sit down for an hour with a sound until it becomes what that song became.
Yeah. Can I just play you one thing? Back when we had a singer here named Yumi Kapil, she was just an incredible singer. She sang at our place for 2 years.
Okay.
And then she went back and did something along the lines of The Voice for Philippines. Mm-hmm. And she did very well. I think she won, or at least she was in the final. So I wrote a song that she sang on stage for us a couple of times. But I wrote it on very simple piano, and actually wrote it as a ballad, same type of thing. And when I brought it to the band, and when I brought it to her, this is what came out. Just a completely different. And her voice. Nothing like what I wrote.
Really?
Originally.
Yeah.
Not even close. Like, I mean, I just, it's just a very bare bones piano and vocal demo. I brought it to rehearsal, and we worked on that song for weeks. So, we would just, it was kind of a throwaway. It was just for fun. And we at the tail end of each rehearsal, we'd say, hey, you want to go through that song a couple more times? And so we did.
Well, I mean, just a very simple point. I remember I wrote a song back in the 90s called I Know. Okay? Mm-hmm. I know. Like I sing that like people are gonna go, oh, that one.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
My own family doesn't know that song. I just
I'll say that to my family sometimes. Remember that song I wrote, blah blah blah, and they go, no. Yeah, no, I don't remember that one so much. No.
Who did it sound like? Did it sound like John Bon Jovi?
That's my favorite thing when people say, that sounds a lot like blah blah blah, and I'm like, great.
That's exactly what I was not going for. Oh. Anyway, so I wrote this song, and you're gonna laugh when I say this.
Oh, not yet?
Not that.
Oh,
you're gonna laugh when I say this other thing.
I'll wait.
Wait for it.
I'll wait.
Till the sun goes down. Van Halen reference.
I'll wait.
Oh man, have you heard the bluegrass version, "Strumming with the Devil"?
Well, wait, that's for another episode, buddy.
Yeah. Never mind.
We've got
scratch that. You didn't hear that. Just put a strike through on that.
Erase it from your memory.
Yeah. Ooh, so effective. What were we talking about?
I don't know.
So I wrote this song called I Know.
Completely forgotten.
It's like the Men in Black thing, the little button. If you just look at the light for a second.
Look at the light. Yep.
So I Know, and I took it to our drummer, who was my co-writer for that band. A lot of the songs that came out of that band were.
Wait, a drummer that could write?
Yeah. Have you heard of Dave Grohl?
What about Phil Collins?
Neil Peart.
I'm so glad they corrected that 40 years into their career.
Yeah, because, pert.
I always said pert.
I always said pert.
Oh, you got to be pert when you're drumming.
Well, there were some people saying pert.
Yeah, but that's how he says it, right? Pert. Or something. Peart?
Peart, yeah.
Oh, peart. Okay.
Yeah.
Peart, pert, pert. You say pert, I say peart.
I've been listening to Rush my entire life.
I know.
And now is when I learned how to say his name. So I took this song to our drummer, and so I had written it with this chord progression that had this huge, like, Roy Bittan piano style,
Yeah.
And I was really proud of it. I was like, this is awesome. And my drummer was just like, dude, that is 20 years ago. And this is in the 90s, you know? And we can't do that. And so what I did was, I was like, I tried to do it on the guitar. I don't think he said the word dude.
Oh, okay.
I think he said other words like
those same
F
word.
sharp. F sharp. He used an F sharp in there. I don't hear a hit. So, and he was like, let's try it on the guitar. And so he wasn't the producer of what ended up being that demo that we put out, EP thing. But he was in that moment. Like, that song wouldn't have seen, the rest of the band would never have played that, much less recorded it, if he didn't say, no, we can't do a Meatloaf sounding intro in 1990.
Right.
Right or wrong. I mean, I believed him at the moment. I as soon as he said it, I was like...
you got to make those decisions, right?
So what I did, though, what I ended up doing, and our guitar player at the time, Clayton Brown.
Nice. Good name.
Really cool, like, raw guitar player. He did some really cool stuff on the guitars. So I showed him this lick that was meant to be the intro to the song, and he was like, "Oh, what if I do it in harmonics?" So he did the entire thing as harmonics instead.
Yeah.
Anyway, he turned it into a harmonic thing, and it just became this coolest intro. Like, I think it's still one of my favorite things that we ever did for that band.
Have you got a recording of it?
Probably.
Throw it on the background there, buddy.
So here's a list of some of the top EDM producers who a lot of them refer to themselves as DJs.
Yeah.
And they think about things like that I don't think about.
I wonder why they would still call themselves a DJ if they're actually what they're doing is mixing, because DJs did start to do that in the 90s.
But you have to remember that what we see as the public listening to music on the internet, on Apple Music or whatever it is, all those things, we're seeing like a little percentage of what they do.
The tip of the iceberg,
so to speak. Are you coining a phrase?
That's a callback. That's a callback.
That's what that was. So Calvin Harris talks about this. Diplo talks about this. Like, they do these festivals where they go and they mix music, or they play like.
It's almost like our jams when we go and jam, right?
It's totally like a huge, thousands and thousands of people in the audience, open mic night.
Wow.
And they'll get up there and they'll be like, okay, we're going to do this song and like do something. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, and they just like, they improvise live, and so they're DJs because at the heart of what they do, they're thinking quick on their feet, and they're using these tools to make amazing music that people just go nuts listening to it. There's Avicii.
Oh yeah, what a tragedy. Right. That guy was, and what's interesting about his stuff is that really mixed a lot of genres into his.
Well, Wake Me Up.
Yeah,
it was a country song, basically, right?
Yes. And with that guitar riff.
So I'm sure it was Diplo that was on one of these shows, like the late night show stuff, Mm-hmm. And he was talking about that. He was at a festival, and Billy Ray Cyrus and Lil Nas X had just released their song "Old Town Road."
Take my horse to the Old Town Road.
Right. So they had just released that, and they were playing at this festival together, right? Mm-hmm. Which I guess for Billy Ray Cyrus was like, what crazy, he's doing this like EDM festival.
Yeah.
And Diplo goes up there and does like mixing live in front of the audience.
Wait, is that how they came up with that song?
No. I think the song was already.
Okay. But he was just involved in this jam.
He was involved in the first time that they played it live together, the two of them. What's amazing to me is not like the star status of that song became a hit, but that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about just how cool it is to get up on an open mic night and jam through a song.
Right.
And that's what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
nailed it in front of tens of thousands of people or whatever. It's like, I just think that would be such a cool moment.
Yeah.
And that's why they call themselves DJs. As much as we think of them as producers, that is them applying what they do to the studio.
Right.
Right. So Marshmello,
Yeah.
I think the more that I learn about this whole thing of how he took the Deadmau5 idea of covering up your face.
Yeah.
So Deadmau5 is a Canadian producer.
He is.
Who is the inspiration for Marshmello's. It was actually a yoga
Actually,
mat.
all roads lead back to Canada, just in case you're wondering.
Basically, yeah. So
Yeah, well, take off, eh?
yeah. So it's like kind of a carefree highway that we take all the way back to. Wait a minute, that's a Canadian song too, eh?
Life is a highway. I'm going to ride it all night long.
A funny story about that guy too.
I love Tom Cochrane, Red Rider.
Buddy
That
of
first
mine,
album.
A buddy of mine.
Lunatic Fringe.
Oh my god! I was in a quiz night not so long ago, and he was referred.
You won
to,
the other night, didn't you?
I did.
Well
My
done.
team won. How did you know?
Word gets around.
Well, it's
Your notoriety, your reputation precedes you.
it's a crazy thing when you win
Jeremy,
something like a.
Mr. Van won trivia night. Your team won.
My team won.
You
yeah.
didn't only you win.
I didn't even contribute that much. I made it
Anyways,
loud.
Red Rider.
I made it
Tom
a lot
Cochrane.
louder.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Good for you.
I was part of the volume. Yeah, I was kind of on the marketing team, if you will.
Whoa, I know that one.
Wait,
That was Horseshack.
A friend of mine, this guy Bern.
Hey, Bern.
Bern Euler. So Bern, shout out to Bern. He's the director of the Canadian Film Festival in Toronto.
Nice.
Bern moved to a house, and he's like, out there just moved in. And this dog runs up, and he's like, he loves dogs. So stops the dog, starts petting it and stuff like that. And he's like, where's your owner, boy? And over walks Tom Cochrane.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, man. I couldn't catch up with my dog, and he's like, life is a highway, dude.
Was that in Ontario or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize he lived in Ontario.
Markham.
That song "Life Is a Highway" comes on the Cars movie.
It's a remake, a cover of the song, though.
Yeah. So I turn to Sarah and I say, "This is a Canadian song." She goes, "Oh yeah, sure. Everything's Canadian. Everything's Canadian." And it doesn't sound, because that version doesn't sound Canadian. It's
No,
I can't remember the
they
name of the group.
countrified it. I can't remember who did it, but it was.
Life is a highway. They got a strong drawl. And then, so she's like, yeah, everything's Canadian.
Yeah. Well, it's that movie, right? Back in the I guess in the 80s, it might have been early 90s. They had the Canadian conspiracy movie.
Oh yes. Oh, isn't that?
It's all the SCTV guys.
Beavis and Butt. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's John Candy and Martin Short.
Yes.
Who I steal his material all the time.
Well, why wouldn't you?
Because
You just can't do it any better. Just do that.
That's it. Those who can do, those who can't imitate Martin Short.
Exactly.
So
This is a great show, I must say.
I really do love this show, I must say. So that was a reference to a Martin Short character.
Martin Short, Ed Grimley.
Ed Grimley. That's
Edward. Who else you got there? Marshmello.
Marshmello. The more I find out about this guy, I think the idea of becoming a superstar producer, I love that idea that he took this concept of
Producer as an artist.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
And I think that, Skrillex, a lot of them refer to him as like the founder of this whole idea. But I'm like, have you heard of Moby? Have you heard of MIA? You remember that song, Paper
Right.
Planes?
Yes.
Like, she, I guess you could say, is more of a rapper as opposed to a producer. But
Yeah, it's the genesis of that genre,
style, right?
I would say.
Moby before that.
Moby is.
And then I don't know.
What about like Depeche Mode and all, like those?
Yes, well, that's where I was going. Like, that's why I mentioned Thomas Dolby. That's why I started looking for Thomas Dolby, because I thought, no, wait a minute. But when he did, She Blinded Me with
Devo.
Science. Yeah, I mean, when Thomas Dolby did She Blinded Me with Science back in the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. He had to go and hire a BBC actor who used
To say that?
Yeah,
She blinded me with science.
no, actually, it's not really a question. It's more like a statement. She blinded me with.
Well, wouldn't it be ridiculous for her to blind me with science?
And he's like, let's throw me some stuff. And he had to pay like by the hour for this guy to be there.
And he's giving him lip.
Yeah. Dude, I'm paying you to talk like that, okay? Just
So follow the script,
go
man.
with my inflections.
What are you doing?
I'm the producer. So I make a disconnect. I was making a disconnect between that and Marshmello because they can do so much now, and it sounds so slick.
I think, man, what Thomas Dolby, a 20-plus-year-old Thomas Dolby could have done with the equipment that we've got today.
Crazy. We talked about that. Like, do all of these tools of the trade make music better?
It depends who's using it.
Exactly.
You know?
That was my answer when you asked that last time, because I was saying, well, you had Mozart and Beethoven. They had none of these tools whatsoever. And
It can make it could tend to make you lazy, to rely on the tools a little too much.
Yeah.
But to somebody who's driven, like if you talk about those guys spending an hour, Skrillex and Diplo spending an hour on a sound, they're not relying on the gear.
No.
They want a sound that they want.
That was, for me, I was chuckling inside because I remember when I first bought my Marshall JCM 800 amplifier, 212 Celestion speakers, and I was like, this thing kicks butt.
Yeah, B flat.
B-
Keep your mind out of the gutter where mine's is on music now, all right?
So, and I had a digital delay pedal. I was laughing because I was thinking about these guys creating that sound from the Justin Bieber song, and I remember sitting literally for hours playing my guitar, and I would play into one amp, and then the digital delay, you could set it up to ping pong back and forth, so it wouldn't delay in the same amp; it would delay in another amp.
Oh, nice!
Right?
So you got kind of a stereo delay going on.
That's exactly what I had. Yeah, and so I would sit there for ages trying to mess with the speed of the delay and the length of the decay and all that for like an hour.
So that sounds like the geeky stuff I would do too.
Exactly. Don't even get me started on when I got the M1, the Korg M1.
M1. You know what I had originally? Dude, this is way out of the box. I don't know if you even heard of this thing. Did you ever hear I think it was the early 90s, Peavey came out with the DPM.
Wow.
DPM's workstation. You ever heard about that?
No.
I think they had a guy from Kurzweiler working on it, or somebody was involved in this thing, and it never really took off. It was actually quite a nice keyboard. It had a Yamaha feel to it, and but actually in terms of features and whatnot, it blew the M1 out of the water.
Really? I mean, the M1 I remember now. Like the piano sound on there was the reason that most people were getting that, because if you wanted to sound like you're playing piano without having one, then you could use the M1, right? But
most of my originals from that time have that M1 piano sound on it.
Yeah, which it's funny to listen to now compared to...
It's not even close, right?
No. But back then, it was like, first time I heard an M1, I was like, seriously? That is amazing compared to the, DX7, which was a better workstation in terms of playing live, in terms of using like
These are production tools, by the way. I mean, back in the day, the DAWs that we use now were still like the guys with money had that stuff.
Right, exactly.
Right? So you would have like a keyboard workstation.
I took a demo of one of my songs that I had recorded. I think I could only do 8 bars or something like that
right.
On the M1, right?
Yeah.
And I had recorded this concept that I had for a song that I took that to Chris and the rest of the band.
Yeah.
That I recorded on the M1.
Yeah.
Because I had a beat that I wanted him to play.
You actually had 4 outs on that thing too, right? So it had 4 outputs. You had a stereo left and right, and then you had a 3 and a 4. So that's how we did a lot of our multi-track recording MIDI.
Oh, okay.
So when we were mastering, none of the keyboards would be on the tape.
Because you'd use up tracks then.
Right.
Because you had limited tracks.
So was it the O1W that came after the M1?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was when it kind of got really good.
That was crazy because it had 4 analog inputs.
Yes.
So you could sing into your keyboard to record.
Correct. There was a really cool Korg workstation in the middle of all of that. Remember Wave Station? Does that sound familiar?
I remember it was a smaller keyboard. I think they had like a 76 key version of it, wasn't it? And it was
Mine was 61.
Wow.
And it was just the most beautiful patches, but nothing like no sort of acoustic sounds on that thing.
Right.
It was all sort of a new way of synthesizing sounds. I bet you could get a plug-in now for the Korg Wave Station.
The O1W was for those of us who wanted to like pool our finances together to buy a studio, basically.
Yeah, because it also you could do audio recording. I think you could with the M1 too, right? I'm pretty sure you could do audio recording with the M1, but it wasn't very good.
You might be right, but I don't think so. And the memory on that was so limited.
It was so limited you wouldn't be able to do anything.
The O1W, you could. It had a CD burner
Right.
in it. So you could record direct to CD if you wanted.
You could
master on it.
right inside the unit.
Yes. So
And it was 16 track recording, if I'm not mistaken.
amazing. So like you're talking about a
It had
time.
a hard drive inside.
You're talking about a time when we had a 4-track Fostex like cassette recorder, and if I bought this keyboard, I had 16 digital tracks,
Yeah.
and I can go analog to digital
Yeah.
inside the keyboard like nuts, you know.
Yeah.
So those kinds of tools, those are production tools, right? In that you're creating.
You're kind of eliminating the need for a producer, kind of. Not really, but
Well, I think I would suggest that you're eliminating the need for an outside producer, engineer, etc. You can start to do it yourself.
and
which
this is
now,
what these guys basically.
exactly.
They are their own
exactly
producer, so they're a DJ, they're a producer, they're a songwriter, they're the whole deal.
correct. Yeah, and in I mean, we talked about when we were talking about Bob Rock and those guys as well. Like Bob Rock said that his role has changed over the years, and so when he worked with Richie Sambora on this last project, he was a songwriter as much as he was the quote unquote producer.
Right. Is he a player? He must be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was in Rock and Hide, the Payolas.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but his go-to was that he wouldn't ask for songwriting credits on a song because he didn't want that to slow down the process. He didn't want it to take away from the creativity of the moment. But now he's literally one of the songwriters. He's not just coming up with great hooks and things in the middle of the recording session. He's coming up with the song to begin with.
Yeah.
So his take on that has had to change. And guys like this, like
Who do you got next there?
Calvin Harris,
Oh.
Adam Richard Wiles,
I love Calvin Harris.
Scottish.
Say his name again?
Adam
With
Richard.
a Scottish accent, please.
I'm not even going to try.
I said to your friend, our mutual friend Scott the other day, "Are you a Scot from Scotland?" I got an F sharp on that one.
Because the accent was...
Or he's heard that 1,000 times.
He's
I don't
probably
know.
heard that a million times, I think, yeah. So Adam Richard Wiles, Calvin Harris, Scottish DJ. And it says, like, if you look at...
It says right in there, DJ.
And this is not Wikipedia. This is calvinharris.com. It's his own website.
He calls himself a DJ.
He calls himself a DJ.
Well, there you go. Interesting. I wonder if you talk to them. I'd like to interview one of those guys. Calvin, are you paying attention?
If you're listening. Okay, so let's talk about Alan Walker.
Who's that?
A lesser known name, but he's actually listed on this. So, sorry, I didn't even say that. We're looking at the top/best EDM artists, and it's on J.SCALCO.com.
Watch your language.
Hey, watch. I don't even have an F sharp for that. J.SCALCO is a musician who has this website. I found this list just looking on the internet, but I forgot about Alan Walker when we were talking about this stuff, and I have no idea why.
Well, tweak my memory.
You know you're not alone.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know you're
That's
not
that guy?
alone.
Okay.
Yeah, and he also had the song "Faded." That one's alone, but
Oh, Faded is we've done that one.
there you go. So
in
you're doing
various
an Alan
iterations.
Walker song,
And I didn't even know it.
and you had said at one point when we were chatting about this, I don't know if it was when we were recording or just you and I talking when the other
They all
17
run together
hours
now.
of 17 hours of this conversation.
Yeah.
But talking about how like they kind of create these songs and then find somebody whose voice they can put over top
Yeah.
of it, you know. Alan Walker is definitely one of those guys.
You know, so this is what, because when we were talking about like the Robert Greenberg statement, which is if you're writing for a specific audience and you've lost me, it seems to me that they would write those bed tracks and then go, okay, let's see now who's
Now what?
yeah.
Yeah, where do we go with this? Well, okay, so we
And
have
to me, that's pure. You know,
and we've talked a couple times about your recordings and the stuff that I do. I use almost exclusively GarageBand because it's
convenient and it's there and it's
Exactly.
It's like the best camera you have is the one you got.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Well, I've got my brownie that my mom gave me when I was just a young guy.
I did not know you were so old.
Ah, well, I hide it well.
You do.
Yeah. I'm going to change back to my young guy voice because this is how I normally talk.
I'm processing this.
So is it harder to talk in the younger voice or the older voice?
When I get home after talking like this for a couple hours, I'm exhausted. I tell you. So Armin van Buren.
Wow, that sounds like a classical guy.
So he's a Dutch EDM producer, and they actually made a documentary about this guy as well that was on Netflix and stuff. Ask me the name. Go ahead.
What's the name?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Dead Mouse, we've already mentioned.
Yep. Very good artist, by the way. I've got a few Dead Mouse albums.
So what would be some stuff that I would know from Dead Mouse?
From Dead Mouse? Oh, man. Dead Mau with the 5.
Right, Dead Mau, MAU 5.
Okay, so the albums that I have back in the day, random album title from 2008.
Mm-hmm.
The name of this album is For Lack of a Better Name. Ghosts and Stuff. Do you know that one?
No, I think I need to do some more research on this guy. I know the name. I know, and I realize why I know the name now, because actually it says that he's so respected in this particular genre, in this world of EDM producers and DJs. Mm-hmm. So Armin van Buuren, A State of Trance, and also Tiesto, who we haven't mentioned.
Oh, Tiesto's great. He's worked with everybody.
Well, that's kind of what they're saying here, is that aside from the stuff that you were just mentioning for Dead Mouse, also those two guys, like, they wanted him to be part of their projects, so they worked together. They presented with him as well, you know. Swedish House Mafia.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I forgot about that.
Yeah, well, that's what I loved about this J.SCALCO list, is that he mentioned some that I was like, oh yeah, like Alan Walker. I did Faded with one of my classes. They picked that as the song they wanted to do, so I arranged it for them, and we played it literally on like marimbas, glockenspiels.
Okay, so here's my wish. Okay. All right? Mm-hmm. And having discussed all these guys, big respect. I love the work that they do. Mm-hmm. My wish is, just like Rick Beato's. Have we mentioned him in this episode yet?
Just did.
Did I? Rick Beato, how many viewers?
3 million at this point.
3+ million.
Climbing. Yeah, yes. over 3 million now.
He does these things where he talks about music now. Is music really better in the old days or whatever? Right. And I hesitate to say that it is. But I don't know. I just, as a general rule, when I'm listening to something that I like in a song, it's either sonic, which means it's the way that it's put together, the different sounds and everything that they use, right? Or it's instrumental. Mm-hmm. In other words, the people playing on the music amaze me, right? Or generally, it's interesting chord changes. That's for me. To me, if it's a 4-chord song, then it better be sonically interesting. You're putting these 3 dimensions all together into one piece, right?
And if they all fit really nicely, then it'll be a song that we want to listen to it again and again, right?
These guys, they're doing a great job of making a very rich arrangement.
Now, here's a question. Why don't they do that with something that's, in terms of songwriting, a lot more complex? Like if you listen to some of the Billy Joel stuff from back in the day,
I think the time has passed.
But what if the next step for this
stretch it out a little bit?
Yeah. So Diplo is Thomas Wesley Pence.
No wonder he calls himself Diplo.
A really interesting guy. If you are interested, go and just like Google Diplo interviews or.
No, you Google it.
No, you do.
No,
it.
you.
I'm telling you right now. I would suggest Google just Diplo interviews, and he's on like lots of different things talking about his process, which is part of what I love about this as well. It's not like the celebrity conversations, like who's your girlfriend or who's your boyfriend. It's not.
I was thinking about this the other day. You get a guy on a talk show, or I always say a guy. I'm sorry, girls. Girls too. You get him on a talk show, and so how was your summer?
Yeah, and you know it's part of like our understanding of what celebrity is and that kind of thing. We talked about this, you and I, separately, about like when the first time celebrities started to come out with no makeup on.
Yes.
And it was like shocking. I remember they would leak pictures of quote unquote leak pictures in the Toronto Star of Madonna. Madonna was caught jogging this morning at 5 a.m. with no makeup. Here's a photograph.
Shocking. Shocking photos of Madonna.
Right. Who cares?
But when you talk about process, now I'm interested.
That's exactly where I'm going with this. Is like I've not yet seen a Diplo, Skrillex
without makeup. What?
I've not yet seen an interview with them where they're talking about like their personal life, and they made sort of a mini documentary about Marshmello that talks about the process of how they came up with the idea of that marshmallow head thing, which is actually a yoga mat, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah, the original version of it was a yoga mat, and they just put a top on it.
I was Marshmello at Halloween one year.
That's right. Yeah. When I see these guys, especially Diplo, I've watched a bunch of interviews with him, and he talks about his process. I mean, like, sort of career building a little bit, but a lot of it just goes because it seems to be, like, authentically his passion is to talk about how he comes up with sounds and the things that he does with music, you know?
Right.
And Skrillex, I think, is a great example of that. Like, I just think these guys are so excited in our sort of nerdy way about sounds, you know?
Right.
I think that's what I love about these guys. When I hear them talking, they really feel authentic. So, yes, they're using different tools than the guys that I grew up thinking highly of, you know, George Martin or Jeff Lynne, you know? Like, great sounds that they made with tools that were a lot less slick, right?
A lot more primitive.
So that's pretty cool to be able to do such cool things. But
you
these
listen to
guys
an
are
ELO
real.
album from the 70s. When we put that album on for the first time, it was the Telephone Line album. I can't remember which one that was. It had Rockaria.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Have you been?
And we would listen to that thing, and as I was listening to that, I was like, it was like magical. How did they do that? You know, how did they make that
I still
sound?
think that now.
Yeah.
Knowing the technology that we have, knowing what we can do with all of this stuff, I think when I know now what I know about the limitations they had in the number of tracks that they could record to, etc.
Yeah.
I'm like, geez.
And they're doing the orchestral stuff as well.
Yeah. Like I still don't really
How
understand.
do you? So that's the other thing. When you take, because you know, orchestral stuff is already really full, and then you're trying to mix that in with drums and bass and, you know, amplified
vocals?
sounds and
Like an
vocals.
individual vocal or harmonies, you know?
Yeah, tons of harmonies.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So yeah. Anyways, I just think that these guys, if they had the technology that we have today, they very well may have been, you know, the DJs of our time.
It would be interesting for me, and probably for millions of other people as well, to take a song from back then. Okay, this is kind of a crazy thought, but a song from Pet Sounds.
Oh, wow.
The Beach Boys, right?
Yeah.
But to have one of these guys, Diplo, Skrillex, call out to
Mess
you
with it.
guys.
Mess with it.
To produce it based on their sensibility and the sound, you know,
Yeah.
but also with the technology they have. I would love to hear what they would do with something that's already amazing. And I'm not talking about a remix necessarily. In
No,
terms of,
like a rethink.
yes. It's funny you should say that, because I did a remix of Imagine by John Lennon.
Oh, did you?
Because, you know, that song, it's him having sort of a positive take on imagine all the people living life. And I took it and I changed it to a minor key, and I made the background of it a lot slower.
Oh,
So
you're getting dark in your old age.
No, I just turned down the lights.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's good.
An honest mistake.
Yeah.
And so I did it, and I made this, you know, I do videos to accompany some of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I did a video because I was thinking, okay, now here we are, whatever is it, 4 years later, let's say.
Yeah.
And we're still imagining.
Yeah.
Like-
Well, I think with a song like that, it's an aspiration. It's like we're never going to get exactly there or perfectly there, but it's an aspiration. You know, like if we could move in that direction.
And you know, I'm not a pessimistic person, actually.
Well, there's a guy, Steven Pinker, who's like a Harvard professor, and he's
Is he a real thinker?
he's a real thinker. Le penseur. And
So he
actually,
thinks.
I can't remember if it's my kid's Dogman books or his Captain Underpants books, where there's
Oh, the classics.
where the kids are saying we're more mature now, and they're looking at the thinker. Right? That's pretty funny. Anyways, so Steven Pinker, the thinker, is saying, despite all the negative, you know, the negativity on the internet and on news, 24-hour news and all of this stuff, mankind is moving in the right direction. You know, climate change is the only exception that he allows for. And he says he has faith that we're going to figure that one out through science as well.
Before it's too late.
Before it's too late. Okay, question for you. Do you think climate change would have been in the lyrics of Imagine if it had been written?
That was kind of where
Today.
I approached my. So the reason I said that is because I called it Reimagine.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Ooh.
Huh?
Wow.
See what I
Is
did
it-
there? Is it-
Because, yeah.
Okay. So, but
I won't
was-
explain it, because if you don't get it,
No,
like...
like sometimes it just wrecks it if you explain it. 'cause
Yeah.
if you imagine it and then you.
So
think
did you do
about it
anything to the
differently.
lyrics, though, or just the music?
No, I actually used his vocal. I used an
really?
isolated vocal track. Yeah. What would it sound like if these guys just made it cleaner with the technology?
Well,
and then,
not only that, but like, what if they What if they were to say, like, instead of using this particular sound, which is really kind of, 60s, very 60s, we use this sound instead.
So Mr. Blue Sky, also ELO, right?
Yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, I was helping a graduating class. They were asked to pick a song that they wanted to use as a theme song of their graduation, right?
Okay.
And they chose Mr. Blue Sky.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so we found a female singer singing that song with just a ukulele.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In my opinion, and I mean, purists out there are going to hate me for this, but I thought it was actually...
liked it better.
I liked it a lot better.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know, so much more pure of the song, whereas the production in that song, I think,
It's a big complaint about Jeff Lynne a lot of times is that he's kind of in the same sense as Mutt Lange. Mm-hmm. It just
overproduced
really kind of overproduces stuff. I don't feel that way, but some people do.
Which is interesting because these guys, okay, let's just for the sake of like continuity in the conversation.
The newer guys?
Let's go back to Justin Bieber. But I mean, super produced song, but I don't feel like it was overproduced. I feel like it adds to the feel of the song.
Well, and it's personal too, right? It's whoever's listening to it. But, because one person, like you listen to Hysteria and you heard overproduction. I talked to somebody else about that, Marcel, who may be on this podcast at some point. Yeah. He said that for him, that was their seminal album,
Wow.
And so when you're aware of production, you kind of go, wow, I'm not sure I would have gone that far with it. It's hard to judge. My rule is it's either got to move your butt or move your heart. Right? It's got to be one of those two things.
Or make you feel like...
That's right.
Yeah.
And so if the production moves that along, then it's done its job.
Okay, so at the end of the day, this is the summing up of our 2 episodes of What is a Producer.
Well, and this is like already how many hours?
Oh, yeah. This is, we've been here since yesterday.
Well, it's like 3 a.m.
I'm a little hoarse. Can't really see clearly.
Yeah. Haven't slept well.
So all of those types of details, while I think that's really cool, it doesn't answer the question, what is a producer? And the producer is the person who makes sure that whatever this song is, for as good as it is, as bad as it is, they're going to start with that song as the raw product, and they're going to try to make sure that everybody who hears it feels something.
Yeah.
What is the producer's job is to make sure that whatever song we're listening to either makes us feel something in our heart or makes us want to move, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Okay.
Should we turn it over to Lincoln?
Yeah. Okay, hold on. And Lincoln.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Good night.